Welcome back, everybody, to Creat3d Work. This is our weekly series where we dive in with builders and creators alike to see how we can put Web3 to work. It may not feel like a great week for getting Web3 to do anything useful, but we're going to do our best to navigate through the times. In case you are tuning in for the first time, this is part of our Created Economy series. We do a show once a week on a podcast, available anywhere you can download your podcast, where we interview creators and builders from the creator economy. And on Tuesdays, we have this show where we discuss everything about Web3. So without further ado, I'm going to just bring my co-host and our guests up with us right now. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are lucky and fortunate to be joined by our friends, old friends from the FreeRossDAO. And we, in the little intro I wrote today, I think, in spite of the markets, whatever they may be, I am still inspired and motivated by the fact that I think the principles of Web3 are still here to stay. These prices, they suck for a lot of people. It's damaging. It's probably causing a lot of people a lot of pain. I understand that absolutely. But the optimist in me, the technologist in me, still sees all this wonderful value being created. And I think we want to continue to see that flourish. Now, one of the building blocks of Web3, though, is these things called DAOs. If you're watching this show, I assume you already know what a decentralized organization is. But I am likely guessing that you have a lot of misconceptions about what a DAO actually is. And we are lucky to have Shlomo and Risen with us today to tell us a little bit more about what's really going on in the state of the art of DAOs, because they are actually operating, executing in a tremendous way, and we want to get their insights today. So who wants to do a quick overview of like what FreeRossDAO is, just to get us going? And of course, intros. Okay, Riz.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So FreeRossDAO is an organization that was created by another DAO called DAO. DAO is probably best known for purchasing at a Marshall's auction the Wu-Tang Clan album that Pharma Bro Martin Shkreli used to have. But they do a bunch of other stuff. They've got a bunch of activist members, and of course, Ross Albrecht is kind of a Mount Rushmore face for the world of crypto and cypherpunks. And they're like, hey, we've got money and influence and Web3 clout. Why don't we do something about it? And so Ross was putting up for auction, or more accurately, Ross's mother was putting up for auction some artwork that he created while in prison, serving 2 life sentences for creating a website. And the DAO said, hey, we're going to bid that up as high as we can. They raised $12 million. They bought the art collection for $6 million. There was about $6 million at the time in crypto left over in the multi-sig wallet they set up for the bid. And so they said, hey, let's create an organization committed to rehabilitating Ross's name and generally advancing the idea of prison reform. And, you know, and just a ton of people rallied around that concept. There was probably about 2,000 or 3,000 folks in the Discord after the auction ended. And Shlomo and I were around for some of those community calls. And when Renee Pinnell, who is one of Ross's childhood friends, kind of said, hey, you know, people with skills should step forward and, you know, help us out with this mission. We were silly enough to say we have skills. And he says, it sounds like volunteers. So we started kind of playing around in the space, and all the stuff that we've accomplished since then is kind of becoming history, I think.
Let's go back a few steps for people who are too young to remember what happened with Ross Albrecht, because I think this is one of the most important issues in America. And I actually have spoken on Clubhouse with Ross's mother, who I don't know if she's part of the DAO. She must be, which she should be, but she's been trying to get him freed because, you know, he is, people who knew nothing about him or what he did have basically imprisoned him for life without any opportunity for even parole. And this is a huge, and I can't remember how old he was when this happened, maybe 19, but this is a huge miscarriage of justice. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything wrong, but on the other hand, we have now seen a decade later enough, you know, shit hit the fan in crypto and enough Wild West stuff to understand that he was, you know, just somebody testing the limits of what could be done. And it's just not fair to sentence him to life imprisonment for being willing to make that test.
Well, and even worse than life imprisonment, it's 2 life sentences plus 40. You
know, sorry.
And then when you think about all the other bad actors in the situation, like the feds embezzling money that got caught, they're already out. The drug kingpins who were caught, they're already out. It's really, when you look at the whole story, it's him sitting there alone.
He's the total,
everybody else is out.
He's the total scapegoat. So there is a book about it. I think it's called Silk Road.
Well, his book's called Railroaded.
Oh, okay. So Railroaded, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are a couple of books about Silk Road.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's interesting that I've learned since being a part of this is what few long-form narratives have been done on this are so off kilter because of the last decade of just hiding the true facts, and like things like the murder for hire, where when I was in Miami meeting Lynn for the first time face-to-face, we'd already talked through this process, but meeting her face-to-face, here's next to her is the person supposedly who was supposed to be murdered. And he's there to say, what are you talking about? Like all these little moments that are so easily changed in a person's mind are not even being looked at or acknowledged because they've been buried right in front of your face, like right on your front lawn.
How much background do we need to tell the people who are watching about Ross and the Silk Road? What do you think the general level of knowledge is?
So I think most people believe that Ross is some guy, if they know who Ross is. Most people don't know Ross's name, but those who do know Ross's name or may have heard of Silk Road, they when you have that conversation, they go, oh, that's the guy who hired a hitman or something like that. And that's pretty much the extent of everybody's knowledge. But in truth, he's a UT Dallas graduate, my hometown UT Dallas graduate, who was a cypherpunk a libertarian believer in the non-aggression principle, and wanted to create a website that sort of embodied the ideals of free trade and general peace, and
self-sovereign identity,
and absolutely. And there's a quote from somebody who has studied this and given talks about this, named Kathy Reisenwitz, and she kind of put it very eloquently. Here's a guy who created a website very simply and removed violence from the drug trade. He replaced broken kneecaps with bad user reviews, and that is really the kind of the sum total of what he did. Is he created the eBay for free trade, and the only restrictions that were put on the website is we're going to toss out anything that violates the non-aggression principle. So no guns, no child porn, no stolen goods, anything like that. You get further into the story, and there's just like The Railroaded is a book that's really thick and goes into all the nitty-gritty details. But essentially, he was out of it. He had passed the site on to successor hackers, and then they entrapped him to come back in, and knew where he was going to be physically. And then once they got him into a location in a library with his laptop open, set up a sting, and then there was a whole bunch of bad actors both inside of the organization and outside that were culpable for this other stuff, and were framing Ross for it. And a bunch of chain of custody of evidence issues within the case, and it's just a travesty of justice, and it represents a lot of what happens in the prison system. He is certainly an egregious case where he was over sentenced, but if you look across most people incarcerated, that's something that I've come to learn. I was familiar with Ross in this case because I've been, as a journalist for 10 years covering the space, and I remember covering the story when it came out. But I didn't realize quite how common, this over sentencing and these issues are until I started talking to folks that have been advocating for Ross for 10 years,
or folks who've been advocating for prison reform for 10 years.
For sure.
If you were part of the Black community in the United States, you would know this much more, because much of it hits the Black and Brown community. In Ross's case, it hit somebody who supposedly had white privilege, but that didn't happen and didn't matter. And, to me, the most interesting thing about it was that the people who tried and sentenced him knew nothing about the field in which he was in. And now we have institutional investors buying Bitcoin. So we're in a completely different mental place. It's almost like cannabis, but we do have to talk about what the FreeRossDAO wants to do and how to get involved or help it, or at least I want to talk about
Absolutely.
that. Greg has given up on trying to shut me up on the show.
You're not wrong to make sure what exactly is the backstory. Like, this is an actual story about the internet. That there's this room, pretty much all of us have been around at this story. That the library that they picked him up was that library on Market Street in San Francisco. We've all been in that library. I used to own House of Shields 2 blocks from that library while that was happening. Things like that. So it's like, it does have some interesting ties. And it's the same way of how, people right now don't understand the power of Tom from MySpace, right? In a positive way. They don't understand what Ross did for the internet in a positive or negative way, however you want to lens it, right? We just, we bury the past so quickly. And now that we're in a crypto world, it even gets buried at triple the speed,
This context...
You can't. It's on the blockchain.
True.
I was going to say, this context is really important because as someone who's very aware of what Silk Road is and what it does, Ross Albrecht, the name is not at top of my mind, so I think it's great to keep making that connection, bringing it up. And this was really the first major use for Bitcoin, right? Why did most people buy Bitcoin? It wasn't to invest in.
No, it was pizza, to be clear.
What this was is the first marketplace, right?
Right.
Like
it was the first marketplace for Bitcoin where you could actually use Bitcoin to pay for something.
Like OpenSea is worse because I can't put a review of how crappy your product is. This was an actually better marketplace than things we are using in Web3 right now.
OpenSea, right.
Yeah.
So one, I think the context has been wonderful. I actually really do appreciate the framing and pointing out, I guess, the hypocrisy of sort of like where we are now relative to sort of like, look, we're governed largely by people who don't understand the state of the art in many ways, right? Like, and so it's always surprising that this is how we still end up in this situation over and over again. I do want to discuss what you guys are hoping to do with the DAO, but I think for our audience, maybe we can discuss it through the techniques and the tools and the way you're actually bringing those things to life. Because I know, you work on a number of different projects going on simultaneously within the DAO. The organizational structure is actually pretty, I would say, fairly robust and well executed, right? Because most of us have probably heard about DAOs, and mostly, most people who are not like really deep into it think they kind of don't work that well, right? That is not what's happening with you guys. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that, right? I guess, and how you guys came to, I know you entered as sort of like volunteers, but what is the organizational structure that you're using? And what are, like, I guess, the pros and cons you found in developing that strategy, inside to the DAO?
Governance is a very heated and never-ending topic within the DAO, right? We just started, when I joined, we were one way, and now we just did this whole new governance infrastructure, which basically deals with, if you want to do a thing, how does that thing get approved? And how does it get pushed through the system? And how do you get adequately helped, right? All of that now has been kind of played with. Rizm can speak more that he's more, deeper into the governance than me, where what we're learning is things that will be interesting to talk about is, one, how this governance model enables your community to work through to a cause, right? And that cause we already know. So let's break things down. Let's do that one first, right?
Sure.
So that cause where that's different from this DAO, as opposed to when you're doing a degen NFT play, right? Right, which is what most people I think know in this space, right, of how to galvanize your audience. You're in the Discord. I say, put a lot of flair on this Twitter, and I'll give you a thing, right? Now, our version, how do we get these people involved?
Would you put your Discord in the chat?
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay.
Do you got it, Mark? Thank you.
I got it.
Thanks, you, buddy.
Okay. Go on, Shlomo.
So in the DJ, right, we get you to like go flag this Twitter, go after Snoop Dogg. Everyone put your PFP, in a post and do it on the Snoop Dogg post because he wants to buy something, right? That's what the degen NFT world goes. Here it goes a different way, where first it's like, okay, I am into the cause. What can I do to help, right? And so that all of a sudden, if you walk into this thing, I'm into this cause. Here, just like any nonprofit, you knock on the door saying, I'm actually interested. Well, in the old version of nonprofits, that's when you're stopped at the door. It says, well, we don't have that infrastructure for you, right? You knock on the prison reform nonprofit office in your neighborhood, and you go, it's like, listen, I want to throw a fundraiser for you. And they go, well, we don't have the infrastructure for that. So no, thank you, right? You knock on our door and we go, interesting. We have economics and we have management to help steer a process through, right? So that's already checked. We could do that, right? We don't have this BS of management to not have this thing go through. We already have this step to go. And then also you have a voting mechanism of, does the community even want to make this?
Yeah.
And how is
no, I was going to say, maybe you could break that down a little bit further for us, because I guess there is I almost like, what's the how does a bill become a law kind of thing, like inside of the FreeRossDAO, right? Because we've seen, I think the thing you pointed out is that sometimes there's this problem where a DAO is sort of strapped on as a side effect of like there being some money available versus like being organized because there's an intentionality around like why we exist, right? Like versus like, well, we made a bunch of money and we're going to do some stuff with it. And so like, this is what it's here for, but that's more of a side effect, right? To like selling a PFP. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's just a very different, like FreeRossDAO, I think, you know, formed in a much different way, right? Like with a mission and a purpose behind it. There's a great episode, by the way. Michael Stelter interviewed Pizza DAO in his latest episode, and he goes through quite a bit in breaking down like how Pizza DAO came to be, like from the mission and everything. So can you tell us a little bit, I guess, one, governance, you know, so there's many models. There's many models in the Pizza DAO, by the way, will be supporting the event next week at NYC.
Yes, Pizza DAO is in. I have a 3-day thing, and they're doing pizza for 2 of the days at our event that the FreeRossDAO is doing with like 9 other communities. I'll throw the event right here too.
Right. Yeah, send me a link and I'll drop it out to everyone in the comments. But all right, so who gets to vote? Let's start with that, right? Like who gets to a say, right? You know, there's all these models that are competing and often conflicting with each other. 1 vote per person, 1 vote per wallet, et cetera, et cetera. How do you guys do it?
We have a coin. Oh, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So whenever we launched, or whenever it was a proof of donation coin. So basically, you got a certain number of coins proportional to the amount that you donated to the original crowd sale, and it's ERC20 standard like that. Right now, it is we're not doing quadratic voting, but that's on our roadmap to switch over to. Once we hit a certain threshold of token holders, we're probably going to switch over to quadratic voting. But right now, it's proportional voting. You know, just straight up normal.
Explain, can you unpack that a little just for everyone who maybe doesn't know what it is? Like, what would quadratic voting do that's different?
So quadratic voting is so I get the issue that you get into with a lot of DAOs or anything where you can buy your way into the governance is that, that's obviously sounds a little unegalitarian. And so, and it's susceptible to takeovers and whatnot. So the quadratic voting allows you to kind of equalize that. So whatever number of tokens you hold, basically your vote is the square root of whatever that is. So that normalizes the vote, elevates the influence of small token holders, and diminishes the influence of large token holders. So it disincentivizes hostile takeovers.
Exactly. It's just like everything you already know, like people come into a normal stock company and buy 30% of the stock and then just kind of screw with the company.
The electoral college of DAO voting.
We also threw in some checks and balances as well, because I guess we kind of like a certain flavor of DAO. We call ourselves a social impact DAO because our model is starting to become kind of a pattern that you can see in other DAOs that have a similar type of operations, like Ukraine DAO and others that are kind of more social impact focused. And rather than like say a DAO that's governing an AMM like Uniswap or whatever, which is very financially focused, and you want people to be able to buy their way into governance in that situation because it makes sense for the organization. But whenever we first created it, and it sort of this little mechanism survived into the second iteration, there is a governance council that exists that acts as a sanity check on proposals. So because the Free Ross movement has existed for 10 years prior to this DAO existing, Lynn and other family members of Ross were very concerned that we would pool our money together and then like hire the A-team to break him out of prison, which could screw up his pursuit of a pardon, right? And so they wanted like a kind of a sanity check council consisting of family of Ross to go, hey, this is going to screw up his case, or this is going to ruin his image. That's the job of that council, is to kind of they don't have any affirmative governance powers. It's just kind of a ability to veto or recommend for a change in the language of whatever proposals are put forward. But if you hold free, any amount of free, no, actually, I think it's like 2,000 free, which is less than $1 worth. You can put forth a proposal, and then it goes through those kind of ratification by the council, and then it's put forward to a discussion and then a vote by the rest of the DAO.
So let me some of the, so in the end, we have this coin called Free, right? Which one is a governance coin, right? Sure, it's fractionalized ownership of our art that we own, right? Which we provide worth by making derivative products and sell them and show them to promote prison reform and Ross specifically, which we'll talk about later about what we're doing next week. That's all part of it. But so when you're part ownership of that, but it's not about owning that. It's about ownership in the DAO, right? It's really about self-worth, about what you could create. And we incentivize you through bounties to get more free. We have an internal metric of, I want as many wallets to have free as I can, right? We want people to, even within their, Web3 email, which is, their wallet, to still be a part of us. And people will acknowledge that on the chain, right? And that's really a major metric for us. And then our next stage in opening next quarter, when we have our marketplace open, filled with prisoner art, like places like, if you go on Twitter, there's program failures, where it's these folks making their PFP program, right? Oh, sorry, I had some feedback, making sure it knows.
You're good.
So program failures, they are actually in prison, and a typical tweet you would get is, sorry, I haven't tweeted in a week or so. They stole the phone. We got a new one, sort of tweets, right? They're in Web3 and in creativity, right? Of people just trying to get out into the world. There's a lot of overlap with the disenfranchised and in prison, right? Just like we all have our reasons why we're playing in this space. And in the end, it usually deals with toppling institutions or feeling disenfranchised economically or whatever, right? There's a lot of that is a through line through all of us who has an actual wallet, I believe, right? Not everyone is just constantly thinking about the coin. Other people are thinking about ecosystem and mental survival, right? And what you could do in a day. And so we try to incentivize that. And we do that because a simple bounty is, are you following Ross's Twitter account? I'll give you 1,000 free for that, right? Things like that. And now you'll get this collection. Then when we open the marketplace, we are now going to be supporting other artists and situations, and you'll do that with your free coins, just to keep this coin moving, actionable. It's not about getting worth to the coin. It's about getting worth to society, because it's, to me, like Web3 nonprofit. This is a different version of, and there's a lot of other aspects to talk about how this is different than nonprofits that we could get into. So
I have two questions, I guess. One on the process, how long time-wise is provided, I guess, from the moment of this proposal?
You have an idea today.
Yeah.
And you go on to, and we could send you a snapshot of some if you want to put it in there, Mark, of like what a snapshot looks like of any proposal.
Sure.
You wrote a proposal, which one thing we say in our governance, we want this simply written, like literally written for anyone to understand, right? So this is not like an RFP.
Or a white paper?
Or a white paper, absolutely not. It's actually the opposite of, what exactly do you want? Why are you doing it? When is it done? What's your metrics, right? Just the normal stuff. Yeah. And things we give you even in metrics is, if you meet whatever that metrics you're telling, we give you X amount of free, like over and above, right? To incentivize you, right? Like you come in 10% under budget, we'll incentivize you, you know? And so now you wrote that proposal today. It takes 7 days or 8 days for it to go through the whole thing.
So it's 72 hours for the review council. It's 72 hours for the governance council, and then it's up for snapshot vote for 3 days.
So 9 days. So from you writing it to 9 days from now, you would already get a check, because part of what you're going to write is, I need, a quarter of the money now so we can make down payments on situations. So 9 days from now, we're already going. Mark mentioned Ukraine DAO, where their founder was our first operational lead and helped start us, right? And when the war happened, she started Ukraine DAO, right? And utilized. One thing I love about it, it's a similar thing where Red Cross only gets about 20 cents to the dollar out into the street of what you want it to do. This is the exact opposite, right? Over 80% of it's going to the street to what you want, and it's getting there quicker. And
Ukraine DAO is an amazing story. So they raised close to $8.5 million. All but 60,000 of that was deployed directly to charitable causes, including something that Alona's dad started, which is a basically an underground railroad. They bought a bunch of buses and are just busing people from war zones to the border. I mean, literally saving lives before, government relief or Red Cross even got their pants on. They had already deployed $8.5 million.
There's something special in that, right? When we're talking about there's a lot of hyperbole of the difference between Web 2 and Web 3. And I'd like to say this is not, this is a definite change, but this is not about Web 2. This is literally about institutionalize how to do a nonprofit revamped.
Right. I just signed up for FreeRossDAO and the pre-mint.
Can I ask a different question or a related question, I guess? So, Shlomo, I know you said it's not about growing the value of the coin per se, right? How does an organization like this then like sustain itself like in the long term, right? Like, is it kind of like a B Corp in some way? Like you've got these assets that you're leveraging, I guess, to sort of generate new, is that, I mean,
let's be honest, we are still degens in this play. Let's be honest, right? Between you and me and whatever, the new Google AI, let's,
and Blake Lemoyne.
I thought you would kick us off.
Her name is Becky. No.
Yeah, I thought you guys are going to kick us off as guests and get the Google AI as your guest today. So, so we are not like, signing up to we're not at that stage yet, even mentally, right? Because no one's making us do that. But what we do have is we know exactly what our operating cost is. In fact, we know our operating costs for the next year because we've now done proposals that'll be out there. We're even making public dashboards, so you'll see where everything's moving, right? We want it all out there because I ain't scared of nothing, right? In terms of this, right? But we also have a treasury, and we have a treasurer who makes double of what our operating cost is on a monthly basis in general, right? So now we have this self-fulfilling thing where we could pay people to do actual good work for something really needed, right? And not like say, hey, will you help us? I'll give you a couple from the mint, right?
It functions very much like an endowment, like a university endowment. And our DGen in chief just goes out there and, matches the risk profile of what we would want to, how risky we want to be with our funds and how much operating budget we have. And yeah, like Shlomo said, we stay within that line in terms of our operating budget. We do stuff that will try to replenish the kitty a little bit, like this NFT drop, but for the most part, we're trying to color inside those lines.
Can I ask? You're kind of at a place where things seem to be operating well, but you must have gone through a few iterations, different models, different decision-making structures. What were some of the things that you tried that you thought would work that didn't?
That's a great question. Finding the right NFT producer was a challenge, right? We've probably gone through a few different teams there, and that's not a negative on anybody, but everybody here's worked with creatives, and we creatives are kind of a squirrely bunch. So it's trying to find the right alignment of passion, skill, and network of artists and what sort of thing. So
one thing we're starting to find, and this is not a job, right? It's like a nonprofit, and people come in and out, right? The worth you get in a nonprofit is really amount to like the time you spent and what you get to do, right? Like it's not like your 9-to-5 job where most of us are not blessed to make those decisions. I am, because I'm a beautiful DGen. But past that, most people have to get in the
How long have you guys been involved? Were you involved at the inception of the DAO?
I came in like 2 months-ish after. They did it. He was before. Mark brought me in.
Yeah, I was there. I was part of the initial crowd sale. I was not part of Pleaser DAO, so I wasn't technically there at inception. But my involvement as a volunteer and then as a leader within the group started probably like a week or two after the big auction, first big auction was over.
And so, do you get compensated as poorly as most nonprofit people get compensated?
Yeah, we're consultants with a salary cap.
Yes. So we may do extra hours, right? But in the end, it says we have a cap of X amount of time for this amount of, hours.
Yeah.
But we just,
And you can look up my salary on our website.
we all have, and like
Truthfully,
I
I don't care. I just want to know how the mechanics work.
right.
Yeah.
I believe things like that's important, right? Like we were just saying, you got to find other people could go in and out. We've already had people, in various like come in to say we want to be a leader, but they never like did a project, and then they tried to lead things and it just didn't work out. That has nothing to do with us. Like they couldn't get community to rally around their thing. Like if you have a proposal, well, in the end, you got to have the community want to work with you on it.
Yeah. I heard an interesting thing. Brendan from Premint was doing a Twitter space. I think it was last week. And he's pointing out some of the stark contrast though, like for when you're building a company versus when you're, sort of doing more of these like Web3 things. And he was like, it's really hard because, some of the distinction is like people expect this transparency for everything. Is like, well, hey, I still have payroll. Like I still have taxes to pay, right? And people like wig out when they see money move like from a thing, and he was not advocating like that we should stay the old way. He was just like, but this is sort of like where those two things are colliding, as we start.
I think we need business training for Web3 desperately.
Mm-hmm.
And, I might come out of retirement to offer some, but
there needs business training and there needs customer care training. Why is none of these people like understand customer care in Web3?
Right. That's very interesting.
Any other industry I've ever been in.
That is very interesting, and it needs to be solved. I mean, obviously the business training really needs to be solved. And I've been doing mostly women NFTs with Craig also has been doing those. And these people are creators and they're talented and they're optimistic and they're wonderful and they don't have a freaking dime and they don't know what is involved in keeping a business alive and afloat. So if we're going to make this transformation successful, we're going to have to start teaching that. And the only one that I know that's doing it, and I don't know the extent to which she really is Randy, who in the Hug Accelerator, because she's got.
Tell me.
Yeah.
What?
Tell me about it. I'm not familiar.
She does. I think it's 10 days. Francine, is it?
Yeah.
Or it's a rapid like night school kind of. Well, it's like all day school with homework, but it's like a business like sort of know-how, like, and entrepreneurship kind of accelerator to get the onboard in your. It's kind of like putting the Matrix cartridge in your brain and trying to give you like as much as you need to sort of be a business in as you launch your NFT. Into a world. One of our friends, Rachel, who was on last week, is actually in it or right now. And her just chatting with her, she's like, "Yeah, my head is spinning. I have like so much stuff going on right now." It's interesting though, this theme, Francine, and you've been here with us as well. And Shlomo, I know we were talking about it in a DM just the other day about the creator economy is very, very much, which is a quote unquote a bit more established in the traditional sense, right? Has all of the same problems. Abhinav and I met because like we were connecting through trying to help creators solve the business challenges that they have. And the interesting thing I think just to point out is there's a minimum that you need to know. And then there's knowing what you don't want to know, like want to do, right? And this was that interesting gap like that, as you dive into like the traditional creator economy, YouTubers, Instagrammers, et cetera, folks in that arena, some of them just like tried to wash their hands of this stuff. And it's like, no, you need to do some essentials, right? Like I think to be successful, right? And you figure them out through mistakes often, right? Like as all of us entrepreneurs have done in the past, right? But eventually you're like, I'm not good at that, or it's not worth my time not focusing on the part I am good at. And then you need to learn to add and build a team around you to delegate the parts that you won't do well or don't relish doing like in the same way that you do the other bits.
There's a business
here's the thing
opportunity for a sort of fractional team play in this.
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. So there's something that's emerging in Web3, and this is something we've actually done at FreeRossDAO. And I can see this start to emerge as a trend especially for creatives who have no desire to get down in the weeds in terms of like an endowment management process, or even just like basic business customer service. We were having issues on the operational side of FreeRossDAO where pay was not going out on time. For a variety of reasons, not worth getting out in the weeds, but like we have a bunch of multi-signers. There's a bunch of people that have full-time jobs that were on the multi-sign committee that weren't paying attention to, invoices coming in. So we formed a sub-DAO, and the sub-DAO's job is entirely about basically payroll management and operations control. So we have a team of project coordinators and a couple of folks that just stay on they're extremely online. So when they see an invoice, they come in and pay it. It doesn't sit there for a week. And it's been night and day, right?
And that's their job in the DAO, right?
Right.
That's their
but imagine this Lego brick approach to the future. That's the beauty of DAOs and sub-DAOs, is that you can just completely outsource in a transparent and accountable way entire business functions, departments, divisions to a sub-DAO. There's a DAO that we rely on just for our invoicing software called Utopia Labs. It's also something that grew out of the Pleaser DAO ecosystem. There's a sub-DAO that we work with, or not really a sub-DAO, but a kind of a partner DAO called Endowment, that we use for 501c3 type tasks. So if a donation comes in and we want to make it tax deductible, or if we want to issue an endowment to another 501c3 from our coffers, we funnel it through their DAO, and they take care of all the accounting and tax reporting and all that other stuff for us.
Risen, you should write this up, because I have, seriously, I have, almost more than 25 years experience helping startups. And in this particular way, these new projects that people are doing are just startups. I mean, they're just like startups.
So I do a lot. Of what I call.
We need to form a scaffolding around them so that they get the help they need. And if you've identified all these resources, I would like to work with you and extend some of these resources to the women that I mentor who are creators and have need of them.
And you can easily see the stuff we're talking about with the sub-DAO. And that's
Totally.
also, this all stuff is supposed to be shared, right? We even already name checked by Assange DAO. They only started and took our whole infrastructure because they saw us, and they opened the week before. Anonymous name checked us in video because they did the same thing of taking our ways of working. But you can even see FreeOpsDAO.eth, right? We have an ENS for it, so you can even easily go see what exactly our operations are doing. The sub-DAO is separate from what FreeRoss is doing, and that'll allow us to help other folks too, right? So
yeah, because this is hugely important to keep it going and make it happen. Because of course, what's going to happen is that early adopters will take these resources and use them, and if they have different skill sets, they'll improve them, and then sooner or later there'll be a healthy ecosystem, and people won't be scrambling to exist in it.
Well, this kind of goes back to what you were telling of helping creators and such. I've done over the last year a lot of what I call launch strategy work, which is really figuring out worth to their product and then helping scoping that again. This is all stuff we've all done. The only difference is
we used to call it product market fit.
Exactly. And as I like to say, the handshake is still around for a reason. We may have layers on the handshake, and sometimes you just got to actually peel those layers off so you can get back to what the true worth of the moment is.
Just a little comment, I think, I've a lot of folks, what you're describing, sometimes people hear it and they're like, this sounds so complicated. I'm like, it's not any more complicated than every other thing that exists, right?
Exactly.
You have a bookkeeper, you have an accountant, you have, a tax person. You have all those roles in your normal life. You have all those roles in your even your little 5-person SMB. This is not, it's just software now.
People do not understand
one person has to sit down and explain it to you in a way that is intelligible, so that you aren't put off by the fact that it's complicated. Because for a while there, people were presenting it. And one of the things that I personally hate about Web3 so far is how bad the writing about it is. People write about Web3 in circular language that is almost illiterate. And if you read about Web3, the chance, I mean, I have a PhD in communication, and I read all these documents to learn all this stuff because I obviously was born before it existed. And in order to bring myself up to speed and learn it, I read. And some of the stuff I read was so badly written that I couldn't understand it. And mostly it was circular, you know, it was kind of like, well, a DAO is a DAO is a DAO type of reasoning. And, you know,
Yeah,
it just needs to be made better. And it will be, I'm sure it will be. I'm going to start writing about it because I feel like that's something that's really, really needed. Anyway.
I mean, I don't understand if we're talking about, like, we all know these journalists out there, right, that are in the tech space, and I just don't understand why they choose to write like that. The biggest excuse people tell me, and I don't know if I believe it, is the same thing we think about all the institutions right now, where it's kind of the last gasp of an old way of living, and you're afraid to transition to a new because you think you'll be transitioned out of it. But those of us in this room totally understand that.
I just got on Mirror, and I'm
no
going
one
to
cares
start writing on Mirror about this stuff because there I'll get an audience that is at least interested. Do me a favor. We have about 10 minutes left, and tell me how you start a DAO.
That's an interesting question. So it depends on what your goals are. If you're talking about the type of DAO that FreeRossDAO is, I think there's a pretty, I mean, it's been done about 5 or 6 times now. I discovered it when I was writing about it for a research group I do some work with called NCRI, Network Contagion Research Institute. And they were studying a lot of things in the crypto space. And when we were writing this report, DAOs, social impact DAOs were a brand new thing. It kind of started with Constitution DAO.
Totally, I was in that, and see, I became part of that, but I became part of it as a member after it had already been started, and I heard about it. So I had only at the end when the bid failed did I find out that we would actually get our money back and who the people were at the center of it and how there was such a big chance that we wouldn't have gotten our money back.
Right. Well, I mean, so if you look at Constitution DAO, which became People DAO, still around, then you look at the Hong Kong Coddle movement, which was a crowd fund that existed for the Ottawa trucker protests last year, FreeRossDAO, Assange DAO, Ukraine DAO, and there's a few others kind of in that ecosystem or that pattern. I like to call them social impact DAOs because, for lack of a better word, really, but they all have the same kind of genesis commonality, which is to say there's some NFT or cause or project at the center of it that is being crowdfunded for. The folks that are rallying around that crowdfund are usually influencers in some movement of a significant size. Not necessarily the progenitors of the movement, but definitely like the fast followers are those influencers, and they kind of co-sign on that multi-sig wallet. The crowd sale occurs, and depending upon the planned longevity of the project, either a portion or all of the funds raised will go directly to the process being or the cause being fundraised for. And that's where the pattern starts to diverge a little bit. You can look at each one of those projects that I mentioned, and a couple of them deployed 100% of the funds to the cause. Several of them sat on some of the funds and tried to create a long-standing organization that would kind of keep the flame alive type situation. But that's basically like in a paragraph or less kind of how to start this thing. But if you're talking about the broader question of how do you start a DAO, it is without a doubt almost exactly how you do a startup. The definition of a DAO in my mind is it's a digital community with an unseizable bank account.
Yeah.
So however you start a community is how you start a DAO. and it just depends on what your mission is, how you're going to decide to govern that kind of shared coffer.
Have there
And
been
let's
any
be honest,
polls?
not everything should be a DAO. Let's just say it straight out.
For sure, yeah.
Like, let's not put every hip word of the month into your daily activities, right? Just like one thing we all got to learn is like just the feature creep of tech into your own life. Like, you could make your project and not make this sort of institutionalization and structure. You know what I'm saying? But it just depends how you're going to work with your people. If it's a bottom-up situation, right, and you're trying to lead them through a process, a DAO is probably a good situation for you, right? But I'm not into like everyone making coins just because you can. That's just like, that is feature creep on your true north. You know what I mean? Just
and not every one of those social impact DAOs I mentioned even has a coin. So Hong Kong Coddle did not issue a coin. They were a DAO that emerged on the Bitcoin ecosystem. Ukraine DAO issued a coin, but it was purely a proof of donation. There is no governance attached to their coin whatsoever.
it's
They have
literally a co-op type situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're running short or close to the end of time, but I did want to give you guys both a chance to talk about the event next week.
What?
If you will be at NFT NYC, there's a great installation. It's a very different approach to anything we've been talking about. And so I want to make sure we had a moment to share some of the details of that.
All right, so let me say, we have a VR installation happening, but let me back it up, right? Because a couple months ago at Bitcoin 22, we helped raise the roof on this animation. This animation was created by Ross on over 300 pieces of white paper on his makeshift light box in prison, mailed to us individually. We took that, animated it, colorized it, musiced it, threw it on a thing as its own selling point, and it was his first Bitcoin-based NFT auction. We took it. From that sale, we gave 500 grand to his legal trust. Now, let me just say, we have already given millions already to his legal trust without ever doing our NFT at all, right? We are just by pumping up situations, getting it sold, and then donating money. So now this is our first NFT. We're calling it a mint pass because this will also has a lot of stuff, utility that's like physical goods packages coming with it. Anyway, so he made these.
So I can get my free Ross sweatshirt? No, just
We are not making sweatshirts yet.
It's on the roadmap.
It's on the roadmap.
merch.
Song first. So we were going to. So now we have these individual black and white animations. What we are doing for our mint pass is each one is a 1-in-1, right? And we're getting rid of each one of them on Ethereum. This will also come with a collection of physical goods, of posters of his art, books, a flip book of I even have one here. This is version 1 of the flip book, right? Things like that, sticker packs, stuff like that to help you get the Ross movement out into the world while also putting money into us so we could get more of his art out the world. In the end, my goal as a media person is get as much Prism Reform and Ross's subject humanized through artistic means, right? That is my primary goal in this DAO to do. There's other goals that I do as the media lead here, but that to me is my true north. So now what happens is to give credence to and worth to this animation. 1, you're now buying a still 1-on-1. That's cool. 2, we're making a VR situation. You're going to come into an immersive space on about 2 blocks away from Times Square. We have it for the length of the 3 days of the conference. We have coffee in the morning, happy hour at night, panels all day, Pizza DAO doing 250 pizzas for lunch, things like that. We have all this 9 other communities.
It's New York. We need the drinks in the morning and coffee so we can stay up till 4 a.m.
That's how I feel. As a New Yorker, I have not traveled really anywhere since the before times. I'm going to be a mess.
I'm not used to 4 a.m.s.
The last time I went to a crypto conference, I got COVID, so I'm not coming to
Last time I went to a crypto conference, I got COVID from Francine.
COVID from Greg.
So now what
I
we're
don't
doing,
think I got it for Frenzy, but we were at the same conference.
Yeah, we were both sick, right?
so we're making this immersive. You're going to walk into the space that looks like Ross's cell. There's going to be 6 stools down. There's going did you know on Amazon you could buy the prisoner sink toilet combo? We have that heading to New York. That'll be in the room, right? So we're making a
You're
cell.
asking for someone to store for you.
We have it staying at.
Would you photograph this for me? Because I'm not going to be there, and I have the worst FOMO right now.
Do you have an Oculus too?
No.
Okay.
You have to have an Oculus too. I'll go
But you can
buy
also
one.
experience it.
You can, well, because we'll put it on, we're putting it online that anyone with Oculus 2 could see it, right?
Oh.
It's about getting the artwork out. So what this will happen is you're going to put on the Oculus, right, when you go in the prison, and you're going to get now a VR version of his room, and there'll be 3 points to touch. One of them will be the animation. Some of it will be some of his words and writing from interviews and such that he's done, right? To humanize this experience and start getting these ideas in an artistic way into the public's brain. Right? That's what we're here to do. That's what this. So when you think about the Ross movement that's been going on, there's the legal trust. These are the people who are literally knocking on doors in Washington, right? That's not us. We consider ourselves the media arm for Ross. We go out there and take his artwork that he's sitting around prison and other prison work out into the world, humanize prison reform, Ross's case, have that start swaying public opinion while also putting more money to the legal trust.
So
right?
my foster son is in prison. And so this is obviously very for drugs. So in my mind, my foster son is wrongly in prison.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I'm pretty committed to this. And I wonder if there's a way of getting this installation sent around to museums across.
That's the plan. This is just the launch, doing it at this event. The plan is to take it on the road put it into galleries and museums and anarchist bookstores with an Oculus too, which sounds weird, but I bet you there's a situation out there.
I better get an Oculus too.
Have you seen we went to an installation here in Denver called Corazon. I'm not sure if you've seen that one. It was really amazing because they similar kind of vein. It was about people who crossed the border and sort of what the experience was like. And they had like the part where you walked in, which was like the loading area, staging area for people, basically. But they made you take your shoes off, your socks, and you went. And an interesting thing about the way they set the room up, you put on
They
goggles.
strip searched you when you got.
Yeah, no. But there were rocks. There was like pebbles and gravel like all around. So you were like sensory wise, you were actually touching like stone, and then you're wearing the goggles and you feel like what it's like. And it was amazing. Like it's completely immersive though. And like very scary.
We are also through this situation. We're spending a little over 30 grand to make the 3D assets of Schubert. If you look at the logo, like you put on the thing, you see this cube with an apple seed growing out of it. That's what Ross drew. Like he came up with this, and it's called Schubert, SHU, which is where you get thrown into the shoe. Right?
Yes,
you do that.
I know that well.
That's why he named this thing, which I used to call Seed Cube, Schubert. And we are using this Schubert as our kind of mental node to what we are doing with his work, right? That encapsulates a lot of these values of prison reform, loneliness, what that means like to be in the world. How do you combat isolation? These are humanistic concepts that we are able to play around with in technology, and we are very blessed to be able to do that, right? Like this is Web3 that we could just say, hey, does this seem like a thing we want to do? And everyone says yes. So now even with the 3D assets, what are we doing with it? We're giving it to our community because they want to put things into Decentraland. They want to have AR lenses on Instagram of like a 6-foot Schubert, right? Like we are only building the 3D assets. The community, people could come in and say, I want to build something with those assets for this. And we enable that, right? We're enablers.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we are at time, gents. But
What can I say except stay in touch?
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys giving us this time. Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful. I think the cause is great, but also I think just your insights and your experience has been wonderful. I hope everyone who's watching now and watching later is going to take the opportunity to sort of join the DAO. The best way I've found to actually learn about how to run a DAO is to join one. It gives you the experience, right? Like get in there, become a member, become a supporter, whatever it takes. And you'll see like sort of how things play out. And you also, I think, important to see how they make you feel, right? Because if a process feels wrong to you, then maybe it's not the right fit for your project when you do move forward. Don't think you have to like copy paste sort of like these models, right? The great thing about these types of organizations is they let us organize the way we feel best. But there's a lot of inspiration out there. And we're excited that you guys got to spend some time with us today. So Shlomo,
appreciate you all.
Resident,
See you too in New York, and Francine, I will see you on the internet, but we're going to get you. What?
You don't see me on the internet?
No, I will see you on the internet.
Oh,
these other two, I'm going to see in New York in like the end this weekend.
Yes, I was going to say you're the only person who doesn't see me on the internet.
We will all be in New York basically Friday onwards or close.
Yep, me too.
Yep. Shlomo, if you need help, by the way, I'm happy to come help you lift your toilet.
Risen, it's so good to see
I just
your
want
face.
you to help have
Yes, absolutely.
I read you.
Thank you.
I've
All right,
been
everybody.
for years.
Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up today, but we'll see you all in person very soon. And have a great week, everyone out there. And stay safe and keep your
Wag me.
Yes.